Lana Del Rey is one of the most controversial artists on the internet. In some pockets of the internet, Lana Del Rey is an icon that deserves to be praised for the music and how she changed pop. In other social circles though, Lana Del Rey is just a person that made good music but was really out of touch, and as a result she fell off. Like, she really gets the "you fell off" treatment, and she's not even a rapper. This shit is crazy. Recently, her feature on Stargirl with The Weeknd has been getting a lot of attention. I find this interesting because whereas Lana Del Rey is a very controversial artist, The Weeknd is not. The Weeknd has been going at it for a little over a decade at this point, and the public perception around The Weeknd seems to be overwhelmingly positive. His album After Hours has been one of the most successful of the past decade, as it includes hits like In Your Eyes, When I Look at You in Your Eyes, Save Your Tears, and especially Blinding Lights. This is like my favorite pop song since, like, I don't know, probably ever. And the public loved this album, so much so that when the Grammys snubbed The Weeknd from any nominations, there was massive outrage. It really wouldn't matter though, because The Weeknd would headline the Super Bowl that same year. And personally, I liked his performance. This year, he put out an album that was criminally underrated. Out of Time and Less Than Zero should be some of the biggest songs in the world. I don't know where, like, come on, America. Come on. Hey, I love you, girl, but I'm out of time. So why exactly would The Weeknd go with Lana Del Rey to work on Stargirl? And you know, after doing some research, I think I know why. Let's go back to where it all started in 2011. The Weeknd would release a series of mixtapes that would get him a lot of attention. House of Balloons, Thursday, and Echoes of Silence are some of The Weeknd's most iconic projects. At the time, The Weeknd was a very low-key type of artist, very mysterious, and he wasn't the only artist to get big on that type of vibe, because Lana Del Rey would do the same thing in the same year. It's all for you. Her track Video Games would catch a lot of hype heading into late 2011. The track would get massive critical acclaim, but the song would also carry its fair share of criticism. A lot of people thought it was doing too much and they just didn't get it, and the criticism got worse once she hopped on SNL. The performance was called one of the worst of SNL's whole history, and well, yeah, the performance was shaky. You know, it was her first appearance on national TV, and you know, I get it, nervousness. It's better than I ever even. But soon after her performance on SNL, Lana Del Rey would release Born to Die. Don't make me sad. The critical reception that the album would receive was also mixed. A lot of people call it mediocre, and some people would even call it bad. Looking back, some of the critiques for this album are very weird, because one of the critiques that I saw was that the album was too good in terms of production. A lot of the praise that this album gets is definitely from years in the future looking back rather than the other way around. As time goes on, for whatever reason, people like this album more and more, especially because it's credited with being one of the more influential albums of the last decade when it comes to pop. And honestly, I can't disagree, because it is a shift in sound when you compare it to almost every other pop star around that time. You know, the songs took their time to get to their point instead of being all flash and listen to this song, party, rock is in the house tonight. As for The Weeknd in 2012, he would help Drake a lot with his album Take Care. Taking notes of my keyboard. Shout out to Target, because I got this on vinyl and it only costed like 13 bucks. I am not gonna lie. This is considered one of Drake's best albums, so it definitely helped in terms of building star potential for The Weeknd. Shout out to Drake, man. With that being said, we can fast forward to 2013. The Weeknd releases Wonderlust. It's a big lackluster album and largely forgotten in The Weeknd's discography. And you know, the less we talk about it, the better. There's still some like cool songs, don't get me wrong, but in terms of like Weeknd albums, it could be better. On the other side of the coin, Lana Del Rey would release Ultraviolence in 2014, and critically, this album would receive more praise, and the tide started to shift in terms of public perception because people were starting to understand what Lana was. 2015 was a pretty good year for both of these artists. For Lana Del Rey, she'd released Honeymoon, and although it's overshadowed by other albums in her discography at this point, when it first came out, people really liked this album. When you go back and look at critical reception, this one was the best received, at least initially, because it seems like a lot of people started to realize who Lana Del Rey was, and it wasn't such a change. It's 2015, and by now, like, music has started to go slower, you know, party rock is not in the house anymore. Woke up an optimist. I think the more positive reception that Lana received has to do a lot with the change in the sound around her, especially because the throwback aesthetic started to become cool. Like, people wanted the Polaroids and stuff. And on the other side of things, The Weeknd also had a pretty good year. Releasing Beauty Behind the Madness. This was the album that really made The Weeknd a star. Like, after this, The Weeknd was kind of a household name. You had songs like The Hills. Can't Feel My Face was a pretty big song. I can feel my face when I'm with you. And man, I love that song. But for the purposes of this video, the track that I'm focusing on is Prisoner with Lana Del Rey. It took us a while to get here, but we got here. Honestly, I think The Weeknd outshines Lana on this song. It's just, it happened. So we can fast forward to 2016 when The Weeknd would release Starboy. This was a time for The Weeknd to reinvent himself, you know. People were starting to make fun of The Weeknd. He was known as the guy with the hair and shit. It was fucked up. So going into Starboy, his plan was to basically kill off the image that people had of The Weeknd. So he would start off the rollout for this album by literally killing himself. Not in like a suicide type of way, just in a I'm going to kill this other version of me. And the lead single for this album was all about The Weeknd being a starboy. And if we're really looking to answer why Lana Del Rey is on Stargirl, I think we need to look at this song a little bit deeper. I'm trying to put you in the worst mood. The whole song is basically about what a starboy is. And with the first verse, you get a better idea, you know. The Weeknd makes it clear that he has more money than you. None of these toys on lease. He also has more bitches than you. And I don't know about y'all, but like, he's not lying. Like, hey, I'm not gonna lie, like, whatever you think bitches is, I don't have them. Then before you get to the hook, you get to the pre-chorus, and it's all about some girl doing cocaine with him. Basically, if you want to be a starboy, you need money, you need coke, you need fame, and you know, there's somebody else that has those qualities to them. I did avoid talking about Lana Del Rey's lyrical content, but if you look into her music, you will realize that her and The Weeknd are very similar. He loves me with every beat of his cocaine heart. And if you think I'm lying, take it from The Weeknd himself.
I was making my music, and it felt like her lyrics and my lyrics were kind of talking to each other sometimes.
Yeah.
And when I told her that, she's like, You're absolutely right.
And I agree with what The Weeknd has to say. I think in some ways, Lana Del Rey is kind of like the female version of what The Weeknd is. Or in other words, Lana Del Rey is the Stargirl to The Weeknd Starboy. My back hurts like a cat. Personally, when I think about it, I think it makes sense. But maybe I'm stretching it though. Anyways, shout out to Jay Dilla. I'm gonna let the outro roll and well, yeah.